Paper was like gold in medieval times.
Oh, not tobacco. Sugar.
That everything we thought we knew about the world might turn out to be completely wrong.
Alone in the backcountry, an experienced hiker makes a critical mistake.
The glacier was right in front of me, and I thought, if I fall, I'm gonna boot ski down.
With one misstep, his life comes crashing down.
It didn't feel real. It felt like I was in one of those dreams, truly, that you just want to wake up out of.
Badly injured, racked with pain, and at the bottom of a crevasse.
I'm still alive.
He faces the greatest challenge of his life.
You guys, if I don't make it out, I love you.
His epic fight to survive. In the wild, when things go bad, they go bad fast. Without warning, your life can hang by a thread. Adventurer and survivor Craig DeMartino fought back from his own wilderness disaster to reclaim his life. Now Craig meets other courageous outdoorsmen who beat the odds and return from their own fight to survive.
Hi, I'm Craig DeMartino. Here's a question. When does something we love doing, something we live for, suddenly become something we might end up dying for? That's a question Ted Porter never expected to have to answer. That is until one quiet September day when he went out for a hike in Glacier National Park.
Glacier National Park in Montana is one of the jewels in the U.S. park system, with 1 million acres and over 700 miles of trails. Ted Porter has been coming here as long as he can remember.
It's been kind of in our family for years and years, you know? Just going to Glacier National Park and enjoying the scenery and the camaraderie together, and it's close-knit family time, and it's a beautiful place to spend time, for sure.
Continuing the family tradition, the Porters decided to meet up for another Labor Day weekend to hike together for a few days.
Well, usually after my parents leave, I spend 2 to 3 days by myself. Spending time alone is something that I really enjoy doing. Especially in the backcountry. You can go at your own pace, you can do what you want to do. You don't have to answer to anybody. You don't have any curfews. It's dangerous. It's exciting. It's fun.
Among the star attractions in the park are the glaciers. There are 25 remaining, but sadly, scientists now believe that all may disappear by 2030 because of current climate patterns.
My plan was to climb Mount Jackson, which is one of the 6 peaks over 10,000 feet in Glacier Park. And also to see the Jackson Glacier, because there aren't too many glaciers left in Glacier National Park, and the Jackson Glacier is one of the bigger ones, so I wanted to see that before it disappeared. And I knew if I climbed fast or hiked fast that I'd be able to easily do it in a day.
Ted got off to a later start than he originally planned, but the first part of the hike was 6 miles and flat, and he made good time.
So the next phase was the extremely steep trail up to the Jackson Glacier. It was just really direct. Went right up through the trees, which I'd never taken before. Damp, slick, muddy. Not the most ideal trail to be taking.
Then he saw it.
The whole Jackson Glacier was sprawled out in front of me, which is pretty impressive. It was a beautiful sight to behold. And I was the only one up there. Didn't see anybody. Just me and the glacier.
He strapped on his crampons and forged ahead. A recent rain had made the ice even slicker, but he made it across the entire glacier. By now, Ted could feel the chilly air coming off the ice. He had dressed lightly, underestimating how cold it would be on the glacier.
I kind of looked at the mountain and figured out what I thought was going to be the easiest way to climb it. There were crevasses to my immediate right, which cut off my route to the right. I saw a rock rib on the far side of the glacier that looked like it led to the very top of Mount Jackson. So that was my destination.
Okay, so I just came across the whole glacier. Some amazing ice fall. A huge crevasse right there. Trying to figure out how to get on that rock rib and take it to the top. Oh yeah. But feeling good. It's not very hard. It's pretty easy, actually. But it's another day at beautiful glacier.
He hopped off the glacier onto the rock rib and removed his crampons.
The rock was really becoming slick, and so at this point it was real slow going. And what I found was just a series of ledges. And these ledges I was hoping was going to act like a staircase and lead me up eventually to the top, and I couldn't seem to find a safe route to travel. I'd already slipped, and it was enough of a scare for me that I decided to come down. It just wasn't the right day for the climb. It was too late, the dangers were too high, I was by myself, so I used good judgment and turned back. My plan was to knock off some time rather than traversing it again all the way over to the rock rib, then jumping back on the glacier. The glacier was right in front of me, and I thought, if I fall, I'm gonna boot ski it down.
He decided not to take out his ice axe or put his crampons back on so he could slide if he had to.
I was at the very top of the glacier, looking out to make sure there were no crevasses. And the angle that I was at, I couldn't see any crevasses. And I do remember seeing the 2 or 3 big crevasses that I'd passed earlier, but I couldn't remember exactly where those were. And that was my mistake, because it was the angle of the glacier was hiding the angle of the crevasse. And I remember thinking, well, if you fall, and I fell. And I started sliding feet first, out of control.
Ted Porter was an experienced hiker, but when he attempted to descend a glacier, he lost his footing and started sliding out of control.
Couldn't stop myself. I tried as hard as possible, digging in the heels of my boots, digging in my ski poles, and I was just barreling down the glacier. I thought everything was going to be okay, and this huge crevasse just appears. That made my stomach drop.
He smashed into the front wall of the crevasse and dropped 40 feet.
It didn't feel real. It felt like I was in one of those dreams, truly, that you just want to wake up out of. And then the pain. And the pain was undeniably terrible. I knew that I was in bad shape. Really bad shape.
Ted was paralyzed with pain and quickly realized he was in desperate straits.
I've always had a question of, if you're facing a life and death situation, who would you say goodbye to? And I found out. And I found out the hard way.
Mom and Dad, I fell in a crevasse. My back is killing me. I'm still alive.
Survivors of horrific accidents share a unique bond, but each experience is different. Craig DeMartino met up with Ted to hear firsthand more about those first terrifying moments.
You're alone. You realize I'm stuck, and you made an incredibly powerful video.
Yeah, I didn't really see a way to get out of the crevasse at that point. I knew I had a serious injury. I didn't know exactly to the extent of what it was, but I took that video as a goodbye video. So I thought that somebody would find that eventually, you know, search and rescue, or whoever came across it at some point, you know, hoping that my family would know what had happened to me.
Because you're close to your family.
Super close to my family, yeah. I'm still alive. Oh! 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 You guys, if I don't make it out, I love you. I'm not kidding. This is no joke. Okay.
When you were down, you were alone the whole entire time. What were you feeling like, being alone?
You know, I mean, it's hard to describe, but it was probably the most lonely feeling I've ever had in my life. You know, I knew nobody was around.
Right.
And it was up to me to get myself out of that situation.
Now in survival mode, Ted looked around to see if he could map a path out.
I'd had no real technical ice climbing experience, but I did see one portion of the front crevasse wall that wasn't completely vertical. And when I saw that, as I lay there, I looked at it, I zeroed in on it, and I knew that if I had a chance to get out, that was it.
Pain racked his body as he put on his crampons. Slowly, he stood and made his way along the crevasse wall.
I had one ice axe, and with that, I reached up on the ice, up on the crevasse wall, and I threw my axe in. And with my left hand, I clawed at the crevasse wall to try to get any kind of traction to help me get out of there. And I started kicking my way up with my crampons. My concern was, since I didn't have two ice axes, when I took out one ice axe to reach higher, that I was gonna fall back. So I put my face into the ice, and you know, when you ice climb, you're usually just kind of like this. I was in it. I was pressed up against the ice.
Ted inched upward, fighting the blinding pain. This wasn't the climb Ted expected to do this day, but it would be the one that would matter the most to the rest of his life. Ted Porter has fallen into a deep crevasse and severely injured his back. Now he's desperately trying to climb up the icy wall.
I pulled my body out, and I was in the fetal position because I was in such bad pain, and with my ice axe in the snow to hold me. I surveyed the rest of the glacier at that point to see where I could get up and walk off, walk across the glacier. And right below me was another huge gaping hole, even bigger than the one I just fell in. And I remember thinking, if I fall here again, I'm gonna fall right back in that crevasse, and we're gonna start this whole process over again. And that was so scary too. And to not fall in that hole, I crawled on my side about 8 to 12 feet in order that I could get around this next crevasse below me. So if I fell, I'd slide past it and not right into it. I remember thinking, don't fall here. Don't fall here.
Ted inched past the next crevasse and struggled to his feet.
I was in bad shape. I still didn't know the severity of my injuries, of course. I'm by myself. I'm looking around for anybody. Nobody's there. And so I knew I had to make it down to Gunsight Lake, where I had seen people camping there, and I was hoping that they would still be there if I was able to get down there.
He made it off the glacier and headed for the lake. He now faced 3 more miles over rough terrain, grizzly country, and during feeding season.
There's always the danger of grizzly bears in Glacier National Park, always. But on the way up on the trail, at the beginning of my climb, I saw 2 fresh grizzly bear scats, and so I knew they were in the area. And on the way down, when I already had my injury, I pulled out my bear spray because I was coming across the part of the trail where I'd seen the grizzly bear scats earlier the day. So I'm walking with a serious injury, didn't know exactly what it was at that time, down the trail with an ice axe and with grizzly bear spray. And I remember thinking, if I run into a grizzly bear now, it's been that kind of day.
A few hours later, the meadow around Gunsight Lake came into view, along with a group of campers.
I remember I asked them, I said, could you help me? And they said, what happened? And I said, I fell into a crevasse on the Jackson Glacier.
Crevasse? What? Yeah.
And I've walked down here to try to get help.
I need some food, some water. Okay.
What do you plan to do?
I said, I plan on hiking back another 6.2 miles to the road to try to get help.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Look, why don't you come sit by the tree and we can talk about it?
Okay.
What were you feeling when you saw them?
I knew that I wasn't in the clear yet, but it was a huge relief just to have somebody to talk to and to tell somebody what happened, and hopefully they could help me. And just seeing another human was pretty awesome at that point.
Right.
Somebody around to help you out.
Right.
Eric, Justin.
As luck would have it, Ted had walked into a campsite that had not 1, but 2 people trained in emergency first aid, Justin Ricks and Eric Harness.
Let's get this backpack up.
He had probably the best first aid care he could have in the wilderness with 2, non-professional experts out there.
Easy.
Myself trained for years and years in first aid. And Justin's been training for years and years in first aid and search and rescue.
You guys said he fell?
I just couldn't imagine like him being in a better position, you know, being the circumstances as they may.
What's your name?
Ted.
Ted, do you know what date it is?
Yeah, September 2nd.
Eric and Justin knew the first thing they had to do was evaluate Ted's condition, and to do that, they had to get his story.
It just was a little amazing. Is this guy for real? Did this guy just walk off of that mountain and come down here? And is he for real? He just fell in a crevasse. It was just like, okay, seriously?
Ted, where's the pain coming from?
My lower back.
All right, Justin, what we gotta straighten his legs. Just hang tight, Ted.
Okay.
Ted's completely coherent. And it was bizarre because that was the first thing I thought. This guy he fell 40 feet. He's gotta have a concussion.
Ted, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is the pain?
I got 4.
Me and Justin kind of looked at each other and we were like, okay, is this is a 4 now. But is this gonna be an 8 in 2 hours? Is this gonna be, a 6? Is it gonna stay a 4? We don't know. We really didn't know because of the adrenaline too.
All right.
And that was sort of your worst fear as a first responder, especially in the wilderness. There's really nothing you can do.
Everyone seemed to contribute items to make Ted more comfortable,
We're gonna find a way to get you out of here, okay?
Okay.
while they decided what to do about getting him out of there. They knew no one could hike out for help that night.
There was a high threat of grizzly bears in the area, and it just wasn't safe.
There was one other option, activating a spot satellite receiver Eric's brother had brought along. This device could send a message to a search and rescue coordination center. It might bring in rescuers that night, or they too would decide it was too dark and dangerous. Activating it could also incur a high financial cost for the rescue.
Hey, Ted. So, my
When we
brother...
offered it to him and he explained the consequences of what was going to happen, he said, you know what? I'm comfortable with your decisions. I think you guys are doing a great job, and I don't think I need it. I think I can wait.
Yeah, let's see if we can get you a little bit more comfortable then.
Okay. Yeah.
Throughout the night, I didn't sleep a wink. I knew my situation. I just couldn't get any sleep at all. I tried. The pain was so bad.
Just as the sun was barely beginning to rise, 3 of the campers started the 6-mile hike to the road.
At about 6 or 6:30, when the 3 people hiked out to go get me help, this lady, Janet, she came over to sit with me. And she sat with me for hours on end. And she held my hand.
I know it's been a rough go, but I want you to know we've got people out there getting you some help, okay?
Okay.
Some help.
That'd be nice.
We should be back soon with help.
I think it was about 10 o'clock. I heard the helicopter rotors come in. I was super excited. I had a feeling it was for me. And it circled. Then it circled again, got lower, and it circled again. And Janet looks at me and she goes,
That's for you.
Ted Porter severely injured his back, falling into an icy crevasse. Now he's walked miles in excruciating pain and survived the longest night of his life.
I made the mistake of wearing my watch throughout the night. I checked every 20 minutes. It felt like it was 2 hours, and it was just 20 minutes here, 10 minutes here. Time stood still that night.
But help had finally arrived.
That's for you.
We've been hearing helicopters the whole time we were in Glacier for the tourists, but we knew that this one was for us. You could just tell.
The medics prepared Ted for the flight to the hospital in Kalispell and instructed Eric and the others how to load him into the helicopter.
Get around the front, get you on the feet down here. We gotta be together and we gotta move it. Be gentle. 1, 2, 3. Easy. All right. Down 3. Okay, Ted. 1, 2, 3.
So after the helicopter left, one of the odd things was, you know, as we're sort of like breathing this sigh of relief, it swings out above the glacier and over the mountain. It was like, okay, that's kind of symbolic.
At the hospital, Ted was told he had 2 injured vertebrae, one fractured and the other smashed. A bone fragment was pushing into his spinal cord, and if they didn't operate immediately, he could be paralyzed. After Craig DeMartino's fall, he was pretty much told the same thing. How did Ted take the news?
What are you feeling at that time? How are you even addressing that?
You can't believe it. It seems surreal, but it's true. That you go from walking 1 minute to not walking the next, and it's a really hard thing to listen to.
Were you telling your family at that time? Were you talking to them on the phone saying, oh my gosh, this is what's happening?
Yeah, I told my family that if I didn't get the emergency surgery, that partial to full paralysis was a huge possibility, and they were just as scared for me as I was.
Right.
So it was also surreal. It's also quick, you know, how fast it happened, from walking completely fine to not walking at all.
Right.
The delicate back surgery was a complete success, and Ted's mother and girlfriend were by his side during his recovery in the hospital. After the hospital, Ted moved back to his parents' home for 3 months of rehabilitation. Today, he continues to work on regaining full mobility without pain.
From the very beginning, Ted faced this accident with a drive. One of the things he said in the very beginning was, I need to get back to my family. I have more life to live. And I think that's what really made him propel himself out of the crevasse and down the hill. I think that's really, really what did it.
Well, the doctors say I'm one of the luckiest guys they've ever met. They say that based on what happened to me, that I'm lucky to be alive. And not only lucky to be alive, but lucky to be walking. The alternative for me was, if I didn't get out of there, I was gonna die. So for some reason, luck, drive, you know, whatever you want to call it, something got me out of that crevasse. I didn't want to die.
Staying calm and focused enabled Ted to keep going when most people would have given up. I know from my own survival experience, being able to break things down into single tasks kept my mind from panicking. Ted was able to solve one problem at a time and keep his pain from overcoming him. He wasn't ready to die that day. His was a fight to survive.